For today's story, I do part one of my coverage of the ongoing Canadian truckers protest and some of the thoughts from some of our brethren in the media who are not so happy about it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. As always, I hope you'll enjoy this legal education content, and today will be the day I earn your subscription. But first, a huge shout out to this video's supporter, Aura. 2021 has seen 1 billion records get hacked from major social media sites, cryptocurrency exchanges, and other sources. If you're a user of any of these companies, there's a chance that your personal information has been compromised. So how can you protect yourself? Well, go to aura.com/uncivillaw. When you use my link below, aura.com/uncivillaw, you'll get up to 40% off on all plans. aura.com/uncivillaw to help protect you against the growing threats of credit card fraud and identity theft protection in this increasing digital age. Yes, my friends, today we're going to talk about the Canadian truckers protest, which is ongoing. The Canadian government, as you have noticed, has been locking down increasingly tightly by freezing bank accounts and attempting to freeze Bitcoin, which isn't really a thing, but they're trying anyway, and threatening to seize people's dogs, among other things, invoking the Emergency Act and all kinds of problems. So this is obviously an ongoing situation that is deeply disturbing because of the measures that are being taken. But, you know, it's totally cool with some members of the media. So I thought what we would do is we'd look at some of the coverage from some of our friends in the media who seem to be totally cool with some of the things the police are doing because they really don't like the politics of it. And I thought that might be an interesting way to go about covering the story. So let's get started with this. We start with our friends from The Verge who have some thoughts. How Facebook twisted Canadian trucker convoy into an international movement. Dun, dun, dun. Yes, heaven forbid that, we get concerned about this. Unlike Black Lives Matter, which wasn't twisted into an international movement, but they're different somehow. After more than 2 weeks of chaotic protest, this week, the Canadian government pushed back. On Tuesday, this is obviously an older article, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the country's Emergency Act, which, was meant for times of basically war or when the country is essentially falling apart, enabling new financial restrictions on protests and signaling harsh new measures against anyone involved. Didn't invoke it for the Black Lives Matter, though. I have to say, I've been watching a lot of the coverage, not all the coverage, obviously, because there's so much, but I have to say, at least in the people on the field, the people doing the day-to-day reporting, like friend of the channel, Viva Fry, haven't noticed a lot of weaponry, but okay. But right-wing supporters have wildly different views of the event. Figures like Tucker Carlson have betrayed the convoy as a working-class rebellion, and Trudeau's response is being treated as enacting martial law, which a little bit, yeah, that's kind of the purposes of the Emergency Act, to be quite honest. Leading Elon Musk to tweet and then delete a meme comparing Trudeau to Adolf Hitler. Well, you kind of lose any argument by comparing anyone to Hitler, but you can just say it's really horrible without having to go to Hitler. It's a shocking split, arguably the single most important factor in the protest. And much of it originates in the fractured way information travels online. Where's the Verge article about Black Lives Matter? I bet it's not written like this. Convoy supporters are getting their news from a tangle of Facebook groups, Telegram channels, and random influencers, which is all then amplified and expanded by right-wing broadcasters like Carlson, The Daily Caller, or Canadian right-wing news network Rebel News. These channels promote a sanitized version of movements like the Freedom Convoy. Again, at least when it comes to people on the ground, there are a lot of people on the ground with cameras just walking on the protest, doing streams like daily, just walking. Lots of them. And what I've seen from these live streams doesn't seem to be, problematic in most of the respects. Amplifying its hashtags and turning its extremist leaders into celebrities. Dun, dun, dun. This pipeline from physical protest to social media to establishment outlets is what has helped the convoy evolve from a local standoff into a televised event that can raise millions from supporters thousands of miles away. Where was this objection with Black Lives Matter when people were contributing to that from many thousands of miles away? Where was the wringing of the hands for the Facebook groups then? Almost all the infrastructure predates the convoy itself, drawing from anti-vax groups, QAnon, and other fringe communities. What are you talking about? To understand how the echo chamber works, man, are you sure you want to use a phrase like echo chamber? Really? The Verve? Really? I mean, come on. We have to start with the Ottawa protest itself. The Freedom Convoy started as a loosely affiliated group of Canadian truck drivers, led by a group called Canadian Unity, founded by far-right activist and QAnon conspiracy theorist James Balder. It's QAnon. Arr. But over the last 30 days, Balder has managed to build a coalition of fed-up truck drivers, fringe Canadian political party members. What? Neo-Nazis. Again, I've been watching these things. I've been watching people walk on the streets. I've been watching this. There's dozens of these people at this point. Viva Frei has been covering it extensively, walking in the streets. And I have to tell you, man, I haven't seen a whole lot of neo-Nazi symbols among the things that I'm seeing. Not seeing a lot of that. It might have happened once, somewhere, sometime, because there's just so many of them. So I'm not going to at least pretend that it never happened, that there were some neo-Nazi symbols. I mean, that would be a bit ridiculous to say it never happened. But I'll tell you what, I've never seen it happen, and it certainly doesn't seem to be representative of this protest. So I don't know what we're talking about. And an international cadre of scammers, grifters, and low-level online creators, hey, that's not nice, that have been able to generate major headlines around the world. On January 18th, by a user named Ken Windsor, and started to get a few thousand shares. In the caption of the video, Windsor shares to a page called Freedom Convoy 2022, which had been started 4 days earlier, according to Facebook page transparency tools. Windsor had posted several videos on Rumble about truck drivers planning to protest Canadian COVID machines. You know, I bet that's exactly why Rumble was created, you know, and how Rumble got its name, because that's the sound trucks make on the road. Rumble. Rumble, 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 rumble. So that's why they posted it on Rumble. Yes. But the post on January 18th, according to social analytics told Buzzimo, was the most shared piece of content during the first week it was posted, because people are looking at this and they're like, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense. And people are watching it from the far-right Rumble. The Freedom Convoy has had connections to Canadian far-right from the beginning. How far-right is the Canadian far-right? I just want to know out of raw curiosity. Windsor's Rumble video also linked to right-wing Canadian video creator named Pat King, who is active in Canada's Yellow Vest protests, and also promoted the movement's now defunct GoFundMe page, which is only defunct because you guys keep going after it, and GoFundGo, and keep preventing people from funding it. Following Windsor's video between January the 14th and the 23rd, several other Facebook pages and groups were created to support the truckers. Well, supporting their right to protest, at least. I mean, I don't necessarily support everything the truckers have done. For example, I've been critical of the truckers and point out the illegality of merely parking trucks, for example, on bridges. I don't know if that's happened, but I've been told it's happened. So I'm just going to assume it's happened. And if that's happened, that's bad, right? I don't think you should have the right to just abandon your truck and block traffic. I don't think that's right. I do think you should have the right to drive your truck around, though, as a protest. That's fine if you follow all the rules of the road and, you know, you're doing all the traffic rules, and that's fine. So, I mean, you have a right to protest, right? That's part of the protest. Okay. The group was also a major initial supporter of the GoFundMe page, with users sharing it on the very first day the Facebook page was launched. Dun, dun, dun. According to antihate.ca, which I don't know anything about this organization, but I immediately distrust them. The GoFundMe was run by Tamara Litch, another former Canadian Yellow Vest, who works for the Canadian Separatist Party, and BJ Dieter, a right-wing commentator known for Islamophobic rhetoric. Which, even if this is true, I mean, you're using this to taint the entire movement of the truckers, who are, presumably none of these things, and not even presumably, demonstrably none of these things, based on the many, many videos of people walking around, interviewing them, talking to them, and seeming like they're having a good time, You know what they're not doing? The looting, the arson, the burning of property, the assaults, so forth and so on, of the Black Lives Matter. I haven't seen a lot of that. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong places. All right. I'm certainly not. I'll certainly condemn merely abandoning the trucks, and blocking bridges that way. That's not cool. But even in my strongest condemnation, it doesn't, at least to my mind, raise to the level of burning things down, and the arson and the looting and the assaults and the batteries and the summer of the peaceful protests and stuff like that. Like, yeah, okay, it's not quite in that same category, but the Verge thinks it's a million times worse because it's part of the far right. It's been pretty well documented at this point the Freedom Convoy has had connections to the Canadian far right from the beginning, including having been behind the initial GoFundMe fundraiser. It also never really represented a broad swath of the truckers, 90% of whom were vaccinated and whose trade organizations distanced themselves from, if not outright, oppose the convoy. Well, I can't really speak to the trade organizations and their views, but I can speak pretty responsibly to the truckers and their views because, they're in the protest. Maybe 90% of them are vaccinated. I don't know. Maybe they just think mandatory vaccinations are wrong. Maybe they think a personal decision to vaccinate is one thing, but a mandate to vaccinate is another thing. And even though they said to themselves, you know what, I'm personally vaccinated, but I still think it's wrong to mandate, so I'm going to go there and protest. I mean, they're in the protest. They're not dumb. They know what the protest is about. And if somehow they didn't, they can just, look around and ask people. So are you going on the premise that like the 90% of truckers who have been vaccinated somehow don't know what the protest is about, and they've all been swept up on this, and they've been doing it for weeks on end and somehow still haven't gotten the memo, and they're all being massively deceived? Is that what we're going with? The truckers are being duped? At this point, I don't know, man. That's a lot of duping. The reach of the content, though organic, was small. If it's that small, why are you complaining about it? Peaking on that Saturday with 1,920 total mentions, which coincided with other large groups popping up like Convoy to Ottawa. But that was also the last moment the truckers' convoy would still be entirely Canadian. Brr. From here, it would travel south to the United States, but also beyond North America entirely, gaining support for right-wing pages across America. Okay, so apparently the rest of the world has hijacked the protest, which is really, really weird because you know what? All the people on all these social media posts in like the United States and Europe and other countries, you know what they are not doing? They are not going to Ottawa and protesting. I would think that the people in Ottawa protesting are Canadian. I'm sure you might be able to find people of other nationalities there if you interview, because other people might be there. But, I think it's still kind of a Canadian protest because it's Canadian truckers. Because I seriously doubt the European truckers have driven their trucks to Canada. But by the end of January, Canadians were no longer leading the convoy. At least when it comes to the movement's online presence. I don't know about that, man. I think they have plenty of mechanisms to get their message out. Don't think they've lost control of the message. And even if they had somehow, people are exercising their freedom of speech talking about it. Are people not supposed to talk about things happening in other countries? I guess not. So where's the Verge's article again condemning all the people internationally who were talking about and supporting Black Lives Matter? Where's that Verge article? It was around this time that what is possibly the largest still active convoy group was created, and it doesn't appear to be run by any Canadians at all. It's called the People's Convoy Official, and it has 87,000 members. The group has 5 administrators, all of which have ties to the United States on their Facebook profiles, which at this point is probably good just from a purely pragmatic point, to be quite honest, right? All things being equal, I would prefer Canadians to run it. But at this point, with them locking down Canadian bank accounts and them, threatening people and threatening their dogs and stuff, I don't know, man. Maybe it's good that it's administered by Americans where we still have a First Amendment, because who knows how long, we're already suppressing speech and all the rest of it. So I don't know, maybe it's a good thing in this context. Their campaign was first supercharged by Facebook's algorithm, which currently favors content shared within local groups, and then was blasted out into every feed and screen possible by ravenous conservative tabloids. American right-wing publisher The Daily Wire, founded by conservative commentator Ben Shapiro, latched onto the story at the end of January and published 66 articles featuring the keyword convoy. How dare they? How dare Americans comment about something happening in our neighbor, Canada? Amplifying small right-wing political movements like this has become a powerful piece of the conservatives' toolkit. Why is it small right-wing movements? Why are you so convinced that they're small right-wing movements? But Daily Wire may have succeeded in putting the convoy on Fox News' radar. The bulk of Facebook activity around Daily Wire stories has actually come from a network of larger collaborative pages associated with the Daily Wire itself. CrowdTangle data shows that one January 31st story about the 90,000 member convoy Facebook group was able to get a lot of interactions on the platform because it was shared to Shapiro's personal page twice. The American media attention around the movement accelerated its lifestyle. In the end, turned to just another meaningless Facebook meme. The entire convoy is a Facebook meme. Okay. The last real moment of cohesion. I love how they're so desperate to believe it's over. Within the movement was when GoFundMe shut down the convoy's donation page, causing a massive spike in activity. Yeah. And the engagement hasn't really come back. Are you sure? In many ways, the GoFundMe shutdown was the defining event of the convoy. Well, it certainly was a defining event. I will agree with that. But it also exposes the ugliness that has been part of the movement since the very beginning. Yes, ugliness by people wanting to support the truckers in their protesting. A very peaceful protest, even in parts where it was illegal. It was still peaceful. So, my friends, this brings us to the end of the article. The Verge teaches us about how Facebook twisted Canadian trucker convoy into an international movement, a labyrinth of Facebook groups and right-wing media. And I'm so glad we reviewed this because I've learned many things. I've learned that the trucker convoy isn't really a thing. I've learned that it's really just a bunch of very small fringe alt-right people, and they're all QAnon and also neo-Nazis. And they have gotten the help of the very small but influential right-wing media and used their massive cabal together to apparently trick the truckers who are not representative. And also the whole thing is over and it's not cohesive anything. I learned so many things about the right wing today that apparently just a few of them are able to hijack international attention and and people want to donate money. And they're all bad and evil. I've learned many, many things about the right wing. So, okay. This, though, was just part 1 of 2. In part 2 of 2, we'll cover yet another article about the convoy, but at least for the moment, that brings us to the end of the discussion of this article. Thank you so much for being part of the Uncivil Law family. If you enjoyed this legal education content, please hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. We appreciate your continuing support. Until later, my friends, cheers and goodbye.